that. Really what I wanted to talk to was a higher level objective for where we're using OSCAL. And I use we and our throughout this conversation a lot. And I'm not implying my company in particular. And what I'm really trying to talk to is the general ecosystem. So projecting a little bit, but there were and have been a number of efforts around automated governance through a variety of DevOps groups, through a variety of the ecosystem that kind of talks to automated governance. I'm going to talk to a slice of it, not the entirety of automated governance, not what automated governance is as a whole and how you accomplish it end to end. But I do believe that we're developing an open source project, Lula, that kind of facilitates meeting a variety of those pieces in an open source fashion that hopefully will bring to light where we can contribute to one another, where we can collaborate, and where also, like Michaela said, we can challenge each other. Because really, what I would love to see is to be challenged on current assumptions, current implementations, and also understand people's use cases. And so I'll get to that throughout this presentation. And so kind of what is this looking like, or what is this going to look like? We're going to talk a little bit about automated governance at a very high level, kind of some nice abstract quotes from the ecosystem of when we started to see this come into play. And there are a number of efforts still underway for automated governance and reference architectures. If you'd like to know more about that, please, by all means, I can provide that information at the end of the session. I'll talk to kind of the problem for where we see it in open source. Cloud native software in particular has been a sticking point to where we've been working on trying to assess how to do this well, how to integrate it in such a way that it's understandable, but also that it's kind of a way to bridge the gap between I would say traditional DevOps and kind of the intersection of DevSecOps and compliance. And so we'll kind of talk to some of the problem spaces, talk to then the how of implementing these modular assessments. That is really what Lula is positioned to do. I'll talk about Lula and introduce the tool. We'll walk through a live demo, so wish me luck there. But kind of provide some insight into how you would use this in your pipelines, how we've seen this used, and how we intend for it to be used in a variety of both CI/CD pipelines as well as during the development process. And then we'll kind of cap that off with a summary of what was covered, where we intend to take Lula, the open source project, next, and a call to action for those who want to come and kind of join us on this journey of using OSCAL to provide a lot of the portability and the medium for the data. So automated governance, really from a high level, kind of as this first blurb states, it's an automated process for tracking governance throughout the deployment pipeline. And so you can kind of treat that as using your CI/CD pipelines as a way to deploy to production, and in particular, not a way, but the way to deploy to an end environment. So that could be test, that could be staging, that could be whatever you use for kind of the promotion of updates to your production environment. And what we want to do there is treat governance as a required quality gate in that process. So every time that there is an update produced, it is run through a pipeline with a variety of quality gates, and we want one of those to be our governance checks, such that, kind of as this second quote alludes to, like security, compliance, and audit needs are met 100% for every commit. And that means that there's no ability for a human to go in and manually or imperatively change anything with regards to how that system is configured, how that system was deployed, and its current state with regards to whether you're using declarative methods or not. And so, with that, there's no workarounds, there's no shortcuts. And so if you build this into your pipelines, um, build and not any one solution. I want to make that clear. The idea here would be that there are a variety of ways to meet this, but here, if we can work compliance and governments into this process, then you can kind of ensure that there's not going to be any drift, which kind of leads us into the problem, the why. I think there are a variety of whys that are important here. One is speed, and in particular, this is something I've seen from the Department of Defense side of the house, but I think it's applicable for any systems that are built in such that you're based upon your business model for how you're delivering software. Um, there is usually either in primarily regulated environments, but you have some accreditation or authorization that you need to build towards while also building your system. And I say while, but that's not always the case. We've seen people build new novel technologies, new novel cloud native applications. People want to integrate those into their systems, and often are, I would say more times than not, we build these systems and we're very proud of them, and we're ready for getting our users in there and getting feedback and getting real use cases developed. And the barrier then becomes, okay, well, what is your regulatory compliance, and how do you meet that, and how do you do it? And that often becomes a separate activity from those who built the system versus those who are maybe doing the mapping between the building blocks of your system and how it was built, and how it is compliant against some regulatory compliance standard. And this takes time. And if you're bolting it on at the end, then you've got a system that's ready, but it's not authorized for use. It's not ready, and so you can't add users to it. And this creates a problem where we want to shift that left as everything that we've seen in this process. We want to shift that into an understandable competency, but not overburden the kind of the code owners and maintainers. That said, they do often have the most competency with the code, and they need to be accountable to compliance in some way, shape, or form. And I don't mean so much that they need to go and learn the standards 853 or FedRAMP or SOC 2, etc. But they should be kind of working this into their development workflows such that they can have these quality gates and understand what they mean, but also help bridge the gap between those who have this compliance knowledge. Okay, for 853, we have a control here for encryption. The code owner, maybe they own part of the service mesh for your application, something I'm going to show later. They likely have a great breadth and depth of expertise to pull on for encryption. And they can more probably accurately say that, hey, this is how encryption is implemented. These are the ways that you could circumvent it, and we need to actively block against that. But in its current state, yes, everything is configured appropriately, or no, it is not, and here's why. And that competency is incredibly important because it prevents high-level understandings from just saying the binary yes, no, and more injecting a lot of the accurate nuance of yes, but here are some exemptions, and here's why they are exempted, or other scenarios. And then, as I've been talking to, drift is very real. We've got these deployed systems, and if you allow any human to have the ability to modify that environment imperatively or manually, this can inject a lot of drift. And what that means then is that you've essentially submitted your report, or you have your report that says here's my compliance against a given standard, and this is what I believe to be true, but under the hood, somebody could have manually touched the environment, and now you have a delta of change between what you're reporting and what the system actually has deployed to it. And that's a real problem. That is something that we've seen time and time again, and it's not to any I would say problem that we have with SREs. It's not a I'd say a fault of the SREs, but ultimately SREs are looking to get a job done. They want to get this application deployed. They want to get some capability up and running for end users and keep it online and available. And sometimes that comes with the need to modify the system. And if you're doing that without checks and balances for compliance, that can inject a lot of, you know, I would say problems with regards to how you're reporting your compliance and how much of a delta there could be. So we move on to the how, and I say, and again, we in this is not any one company, but more an ecosystem that we're building on to try and find a way to inject automation into how we develop software, and how we deliver that software and ensure that it is compliant to downstream systems. And so we allow for this source of truth where we use the components, the component definition in a sense to provide the specification of one piece of a future system. And we use that as a source of truth. Here are the controls that are applicable or impacted by this application. Here are some like automated validations that we would want to use as a way to challenge the current state versus a known uncompliant state. And that applies at a application scope as well as, outside that to namespace or global scopes. And so that's important. I'll get to that. But we can provide kind of a framework here, which is I want to deliver an application. Here's my OSCAL. Here is my automated validations. And we continue to use that in isolation to develop the application, as well as when it gets ingested by an upstream system, it gets aggregated, and those all start to be aggregated into a larger system, which would then have many different controls that are satisfied, many different ways with which to validate them, which I will show. And we do that in such a way so we can do these modular assessments at the individual application layer as well as at the system layer, and then we can evaluate. We can say, here's the threshold. And really what the threshold is meant to provide is a, kind of a acceptance that at the application layer, there may be controls that are applicable that, require larger context from the system in order to be completely satisfied. And so we want to capture them. We want to use this as the source of truth, but we understand that in isolation, they won't be satisfied. We can't, ensure that all the pieces are present in order to be satisfied. But with that, they're still applicable. When they get aggregated to the upstream system, they'll become more important. And that's when you'll establish, okay, well, this control at one layer, we expect it to not be satisfied. At a higher level, we do want them to all be met. So Lula, this is the fun part that we're driving towards here. Is Lula is a free and open source project, and you can find it at this link here for GitHub. Apache 2 license. There's no data or vendor lock in here. We explicitly went with the OSCAL data format because we wanted the portability of the data without having the need to invent a new or a proprietary format for storing this compliance information. So there's going to be a lot of goodness that can come from that. What does Lula do? Here. So this is the Lula repository. You can get more information about its current scope. What does it do is it adds the ability to use OSCAL as a format for capturing individual component control information and then using automation that is either embedded or co-located to perform a validation of that control against a given application or against a given system. OSCAL native. And so we right now ingest component definitions and produce assessment results as following the OSCAL models. There are some more in-betweens that I will get to at the end for next steps that I would love to talk to because it's very exciting changes on the horizon. And then what Lula does is it adds this validation format. And so for sake of a proof of something being compliant, we collect specific amounts of data that are applicable to a control and establish policy as code that says here is the adherence that is required in order for this to be satisfied. And we allow for that to be a process which you continue to iterate and stack additional checks as you define them in order to create these very provenant workflows for compliance. So, demo. This is going to be the fun part. I'm going to do this kind of live from